Are you searching for purpose of life? Discover your true identity. Stay tuned to Shalom World.
Hello and welcome to Found by Shalom World. I'm your host from Ireland, Katie Ascough. On this show, I talk to guests about two main things: how they know God and how they are serving Him now. Typically, guests have a lot to share. Sometimes it's a dramatic conversion story, and oftentimes it's simple advice on how to be a good Catholic. They're often speaking from personal experience, but also through the experience of those they've encountered in their ministries. I've been learning a lot from our guests, and I hope you can too. Today we are speaking with Jason Evert, Catholic author and chastity speaker. Together with his wife Kristalina, they've spoken on 6 continents to more than 1 million people. They've also written over 15 books and have founded the Chastity Project. So today Jason is going to share his story with us, how he came to know God, and how he's come to be one of the best known Catholic speakers in the entire world. We're going to hear lots from Jason about how to live a pure life and how to help others we know to do the same. I hope you enjoy our conversation with Jason, and welcome to Found. Hi Jason, you're very welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on. It's good to be with you.
Of course. How are you keeping, and where are you joining us from today?
I'm in Arizona, and we're doing pretty well out here. My wife and I and 8 kids. Nice and warm out here in sunny Arizona.
Oh, very jealous. How sunny is sunny? I mean, it's not exactly summer yet.
Shorts and t-shirt all year round.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm in Ireland, and it's definitely not quite like that. In fact, I want to address that, perhaps the elephant in the room. I'm addressing you from Ireland, and this time last year you had a tour here. It was supposed to take place. It ended up getting cancelled, essentially because our wonderful, fairly biased media here in Ireland, they drummed up a storm, and lots of misinformation and a lot of article titles that were very misleading led to some schools and universities cancelling your talk. So you're on the list of those who have been cancelled. I don't know if that's something to be proud of. It's obviously a shame that you weren't able to make it. But just tell us about that. Were you ever cancelled before, and why do you think that happened?
Yeah, it's happened before. One public high school in America canceled my presentation, a public school, because they said they were afraid that I was going to say the word marriage during the presentation. I mean, that's how bad it was.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, no. I'm like, well, what do you want me to tell the kids the same sex for? Like, save it for later? I'm like, that's like after school.
Yeah.
Like, where's the finish line? But yeah. So we had a number of events back out in Ireland, and then a number of other events ended up filling those slots and saying, hey, if you won't have them, we'll have them. And so I was still all set to go for the trip. But the morning I was supposed to leave, all the family got sick. My wife was thrown up. My daughter, my son, everybody was sick, and I couldn't leave all of them to go talk about love. All my entire family's sick at home. So the trip ended up not being canceled because of that, but because of the illness. But then the media said, oh, it's a victory for free speech. And the university said, we finally show how inclusive we are in celebrating diversity. And I'm like, well, there's nothing quite as exclusive as your idea of inclusivity.
I know, that's so true. And unfortunately, it's my alma mater that you're talking about. You were scheduled to speak at UCD, University College Dublin. And why do you think universities in particular are so set on nannying their students, like protecting them almost, from certain points of view? Why do they think they have to do that?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's kind of an insult to the students that they can't be exposed to viewpoints other than their own. But I always try to presume the goodness of someone else's heart, that they're trying to think, oh, wait a minute, this guy's going to come in with this bigoted hate speech that's going to make these, marginalized community feel like they're hated by God and the church, and we don't want to expose them to that homophobic behavior. But they don't actually take the time to listen, that this is a message of love. It's a message of good news, that the church is their home and the church needs them just like they need the church. So it was never a message of hate to begin with, but they didn't bother to actually listen to it. But in the end, all the
Sure.
media exposure ended up driving more people to our chastity ministry than I ever would have been able to reach by just coming and talking to some college kids on their
Amazing.
retreat.
Amazing. I love that. God's providence, right? He always provides, he always has a plan. He really, really does. So I've been following your work for quite a while now, Jason. Actually, I was 15 years old when my parents first gave me one of your books. It was called If You Really Love Me. They gave it to me for Christmas and they said, you're not allowed to date until you read this book. And of course, that was a huge incentive. I read it with much enthusiasm, but I actually was deeply impacted by that book because it was at a stage in my life where I knew I wanted to live chastely, but I wasn't really like rooted in that. I didn't really have convincing answers for my friends or, in situations, what would I say, So this book was so impactful for me at such a young age. And what I love as well is 6 years later, I would actually give that book to a guy I was thinking about dating. It was kind of like a litmus test. If he agreed with this book, we were good to go. It was kind of the last hurdle. And now I'm married to him. So obviously things went very well. So your book has been hugely impactful on my life, and I've given it to many friends over the years. And I know you've spoken to over 1 million young people. Can you just tell us, how did you get into being a chastity speaker in the first place? Why is that the subject that you've been tackling for these 20 years?
I love your story because it really shows that chastity is the guardian of love. Chastity frees you to love. Chastity frees you to know if you're authentically being loved. Like, does this guy truly want and desire me, or does he just want the pleasure he could get from me? And chastity is able to weed out those guys who have the wrong intentions. And so for me, I started speaking about it back in college, leading high school retreats, and the kids would come up to me, and the struggles that they're going through in this area were so profound, and no one was giving them any guidance. At the same time, I was doing sidewalk counseling, so crisis pregnancy counseling, women who are going to be having an abortion literally within the next hour, trying to give them different options. And I did that for years, but I just felt late. Like, why am I meeting this 22-year-old girl when she's about to have an abortion in 45 minutes? Why can't I meet her when she's 15? Because maybe if she learned about
Mhm.
chastity then, she never would have dated this creep to begin with and be in this difficult situation. So I realized, to save the most unborn babies, I have to swim upstream to where the root of the problem is, which is unchastity. And so I started learning about St. John Paul II's writings, Love and Responsibility, and realized, like, wow, this is the antidote to this culture of confusion. And so I started just sharing his insight with the young people, and it was like the light would just go on. And the kids realize, well, wait a minute, this isn't a bunch of lists of rules and prohibitions and shame and guilt and fear. Like, this is what my heart wants. I want to be wanted and loved for all of the right reasons. And chastity helps you to find that.
Absolutely. So, so true. And also, I had this conversation with friends the other day. It's kind of on a similar topic. So we were talking about chastity and trying to have conversations with people about that virtue. And we were wondering, does it make sense to someone not in the faith to live chastely? Like, what's the best argument we can put forward to someone who maybe isn't Catholic or doesn't even believe in God? Do you think there are certain ways we can talk about chastity to those kinds of people?
Oh, absolutely. You need to, because I speak to public high schools all the time, public universities, and we just pull all the religious stuff out. And I've had students come to
Mhm.
me and say, wow, thank you for your talk, because now I understand that this lifestyle pertains to me, even though I don't go to church on Sundays. And so one way to do that is explain, well, what is lust? Lust is not passion. Lust is not desire. Lust is not sexual attraction. Lust is the reduction of the human person to their sexual value. It's a lack of seeing the fullness of the goodness of the person. Whereas what chastity is an ability to love the person rightly. And so, I find one of the best ways to, give this to them is like, well, what is it that you really want? Do you want a love that's temporary, that's, about addiction and manipulation and infidelity? And everyone's obviously no. You want a love that's free, that's total, that's faithful, that's life giving. And that's the wedding vows. And so what sex is, the wedding vows made flesh. You're speaking the wedding promises, not with your words, but with your body. And so the reason we save sex for marriage is not because it's bad and dirty, but because the total gift of the body should correspond to the total gift of the person. Why give a person your body if you're not going to give them yourself? And marriage is the total gift of self, and that's why the total gift of the body should correspond with that. And then our bodies are speaking the truth. It's just a matter of sexual honesty.
Mm-hmm. And what about talking to kids about chastity? I know you have a few kids yourself. Is it 8 at this stage? 8 children?
Yeah, we've got 8. The oldest is 16.
Amazing.
The youngest is 1.
Amazing. Beautiful, beautiful. How have you been able to talk to them about chastity? Like, what does it look like for children? Because I imagine there's this delicate balance between kind of piquing their interest too soon or making them curious when you don't want to. Maybe it's just too soon for them. How have you been able to talk to your children about this really important topic?
Well, as you had mentioned, it needs to be age appropriate. So when they're real young, you can talk about modesty and private parts when they're getting dressed. And you don't want to say, well, that's a bad body part. That's a dirty body part. No, the body's not dirty. It's good. And so, and as they progress, then, and they start using screens, you could explain to them, there's good pictures out there that make you feel really good inside, but there's some bad pictures on the computer too sometimes. Some people will even put pictures showing parts of their body that should be covered up with a bathing suit. And if you see any of those pictures, turn off the computer and come tell mommy and daddy, and you're not in trouble. And we're sorry that the world is so confused about the goodness of their body. And so kind of inoculating from the junk that's out there. Now, every kid is different in terms of what age you want to tell them what information, because some kids, 13 years old, they couldn't care less, right? And then you've got like some 9-year-old who's like, mommy, how'd the baby get in your belly? I'm like, oh, God put the baby in my belly. He's like, no, how did God put that baby in that belly? Like, so one's precocious, one couldn't care less. That's why the parents are the primary sex educators, not the school, not the government, not even the church. It's the parents. They know best, but they need to get over their insecurities when it comes to talk about this stuff. Could it be a little awkward? Perhaps. But that's part of the authenticity of it. And you never know how the kids are going to react, but it doesn't matter. You have to speak. A friend of mine told his kid how babies are made. And the kid was like, Dad, how long have people been doing this? I'm like, tell him the 1960s. Gross. And he said, Dad, is there any other way? And the dad's like, that's pretty much it. And then the little girl came to him. And the little girl said to Daddy, he said, Daddy, I want to be like the Blessed Virgin Mary. And the dad said, that's great. And she said, yes, I want to get pregnant before I'm married. And the dad's like, no, that's not. So, every kid's a little different, but we just got to not be afraid to speak to them, to share resources. And like your parents, you probably wouldn't sit and listen to them read you a 300-page book on chastity, but they know you've got the questions. But you'd rather sometimes find the answers in private. And so, hey, here's a solid resource. Check it out. You can date when you're done reading it. You probably read that thing in 25 minutes, because we're hungry for answers.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's such good advice. Thank you, Jason. I wonder, can we get a little bit more into your story of faith? Because this is a show about conversion stories, and all of us have a conversion story, whether we were atheists before or maybe raised Catholic and eventually had to choose our faith for ourselves. Can you just tell us, your background? Were you always Catholic? And if not, or if you were, when did you make it your own? And how have you developed such a strong prayer life?
Yeah, well, being raised in an Irish Catholic family, the Mass was always there, Sunday Mass, grace before meals. But, I started to kind of live a double life in high school where I kind of had my church friends, but then I had my other friends who weren't quite so religious, but just living this double life and thinking, well, I'm not that bad. I'm a good person. I'm somewhere between Mother Teresa and Osama bin Laden, somewhere right in the middle there. But just living a pretty spiritually mediocre life. And for me, my conversion wasn't like some one-time St. Paul experience. To me, it's still going on, daily, of trying to live my life more integrated, body and soul, sexuality and our spirituality, our religion and our reality. And so it's a daily kind of thing. But, day by day, I have a priest in San Diego who told me, Jason, the Holy Spirit talks to you 100 times a day. how often are you listening? And so to me, it was a continual thing of not practicing chastity, but then going to church and saying, oh, I believe in God and all this stuff. And it's like, sometimes it's disjointed. And it's like, oh, I want to live in harmony between what I believe and how I behave. And so it was very gradual. I eventually got rid of my pornography towards the end of high school and started relooking the way that I was dating, that I shouldn't be doing stuff with girls that I wouldn't want some other guy to do with my future wife tonight, and trying to live with that integrity. Well, why would I do something with a girl if I wouldn't want some other guy doing that with my little sister or my daughter one day? And so just gradually trying to bring my life into conformity, with my faith. And so it's been a continual, conversion process. And I think that's kind of helpful to hear that not everyone has this like flash of lightning and everything's different, but it's a daily continual battle and struggle. So, especially with chastity, it isn't something you sign your little commitment card and you're good to go. It's a daily battle of the imagination, of the heart, of the mind, the eyes, and the body.
Absolutely. And what does that day-to-day look like for you, your prayer life, that is? I'm especially curious to know, how does it work in the context of a family? You've got 8 kids. I'm sure, sometimes maybe it can get a little chaotic. I'm the oldest of 7, so I'm speaking from experience. So how much of your prayer time is on your own? How much do you prioritize praying with your wife and then with your kids? Like, how do you figure all of that out?
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing you got to do is you got to wake up before everybody. So I wake up a little early. I'll do I'll do my morning consecration to Our Lady, do a little Lectio Divina, praying on the gospel reading that day that's going to come in Mass. And then I'll go to a morning Mass and I'll spend some time in Eucharistic adoration after I drop the kids off at school. We'll pray a decade of the Rosary on the way to school. And then they've got some prayers that they do at school. And then the evening, we try to do prayers with the kids, sometimes the whole family, sometimes just with the kids as we're putting them to bed. And then obviously Mass on Sundays, grace before meals. And, it's a battle. I mean, trying to pray contemplatively with 8 kids and 2 dogs is a zoo.
Great.
But sometimes you have to let go of your idea of just how deeply you can get into meditation with 8 kids while this one's climbing up the wall and drawing with crayons on the dog or whatever. So it's a little crazy, but that's okay. You just got to try to carve out the time and be disciplined with it. And ultimately, more importantly than just praying with them all the time, is pursuing our own prayer lives, because they'll see that, that we're making the time, that the interior life is important. And so a friend of mine, he said it best. He said, a man's love for his wife and kids can be gauged by the extent to which he defends his interior life of prayer. That's how much he loves his wife and kids. Because if I'm not guarding my own prayer life, I can't guard their souls either.
Absolutely. And can you tell us a bit more about just some of your projects that you're working on? I know there's a lot going on. You have a book not too long ago released called Forge, which you wrote with Matt Fradd. You have your podcast, Lust is Boring, and I'm sure many other things going on. So can you just tell us a little bit about what you're working on? Where can we find your projects?
Yeah, everything is at chastity.com. If you want to listen to the podcast or read the books, the new one, as you said, that we just came out as Forge. It's a 33-day book for guys on how to break free from lust, whether it's porn or going too far with my girlfriend or not being faithful to my wife, whatever it is. It's just for guys in general. And every day of the book, we email you a free video. It's just 3 minutes long from a different speaker, whether it's Father Jacques Philippe or Father Mike Schmitz or myself or Matt Fradd, just encouraging you, giving you different weapons in this arsenal to fight this enemy of the world, the flesh, and the devil. And so that's called Forged. We'll mail it to Ireland, or you can even get the ebook today if you wanted to start that journey. And we want you to do it with another guy. Like, don't go solo. Have whether father, teenage son, 2 college guys, roommates, whatever. Find some fellowship and accountability and do that. And then the biggest project on the horizon is coming out in May. We're launching a whole new website at chastity.com with a program called Missionaries of Chastity, where you can get free resources to distribute anywhere in the world to your community. So if you're a university student and you're thinking, hey, our college could really use this message, we'll send you books, maybe the non-Catholic versions, maybe the Catholic versions, and then you can find some way to give them away on campus. So it doesn't cost you anything, but you can use this message to change people's lives, because otherwise they may never hear the message. So we're going to be launching that in May. And so stay tuned at chastity.com. You can connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. We release videos every single day on YouTube that you could watch and share, spread them to your friends, because maybe you're not eloquent in speaking, but you know the message needs to get out there. So don't be afraid, post it and share the stuff.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Jason, for your time today. And just on a personal level, thank you so much for the work that you've been doing for these past 20 years. It's had a huge impact on me, as I've said, my friends, my siblings. I know thousands of people across the world. So thank you for all that you do.
Oh, you're welcome. And I can't wait, God willing, for the day I can finally get to my homeland, Ireland. So let's just keep praying, and we'll see when it's his time for the doors to open.
Absolutely.
Yeah, can't wait.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jason. God bless.
You too.
We just spoke with Jason Evert here on Shalom World's Found. Until next time, take care.
I spent much of my 39 years as a priest working with young people, and I've constantly found young people to be wonderful, yearning for something beautiful in their lives, yearning for peace, yearning for shalom. That's why I really hope that Shalom Media will be able to communicate that message of hope to young people who are told to expect so little from themselves. And so I really wish the blessing of God to come on all of you who follow the programs with Shalom Media, to ensure that young people will hear the good news of the gospel about a God who believes in us. So with that in mind, we ask the blessing of the Lord on Shalom and all that it does, and on all of you who follow its programs right around the world. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.